The Colt Night Cobra, a modern Colt with old school DNA. If you're a Colt fan, you already know every revolver they build carries a certain weight, not just in steel, but in history. Today we're taking a closer look at one that often flies under the radar, the Colt Night Cobra. This isn't a nostalgia piece. It's not trying to be a python or a detective special. The Night Cobra is something different. A modern, purpose-built revolver designed for real-world use with just enough Colt DNA to remind you where it came from. Background: the Night Cobra quietly entered Colt's lineup as part of their modern revolver revival. Unlike the classic, aluminum-framed Cobras of the past, this version is built on a stainless steel frame and finished in a durable matte black coating. It's a double-action-only revolver chambered in .38 Special plus P with a bobbed hammer and night sights. From the start, it was clearly designed as a defensive tool, not a display piece. And that's really the point. The Night Cobra isn't trying to compete with vintage Colts in beauty or nostalgia. It's aiming to be a practical, durable, and dependable modern carry gun that still feels like a Colt. Vintage Cobra versus the modern Night Cobra. To really understand the Night Cobra, it helps to see where it sits in the Colt timeline. The vintage Cobras were ultralight, aluminum frame revolvers aimed at deep concealment and plainclothes use. They had classic double action and single action triggers, exposed hammers, and were not rated for modern plus P pressure loads. Today they're appreciated as collectible pieces with that unmistakable old-school Colt feel. The modern Cobra line, including the Night Cobra, takes that concept and updates it for today's defensive shooter. Stainless steel construction, a plus P rating for modern defensive ammunition, improved ergonomics, and a more refined trigger. The standard modern Cobra keeps a traditional exposed hammer and dual and single action trigger. The Night Cobra, by contrast, strips things down. Double action only, bobbed hammer for simplicity and snake-free carry, night sights for low-light defensive work, a stealthy all-black duty-oriented appearance. The trade-off is weight. The modern guns are heavier than the old alloy Cobras, but they're also stronger, more durable, and better suited to frequent shooting with defensive loads. In short, the vintage Cobras are light, classic, and collectible. The Night Cobras are heavier, tougher, and purpose-built for modern concealed carry. Shooter experience. Talk to people who actually own and shoot the Night Cobras, and you'll hear the same thing over and over. The trigger is better than they expected. For a double-action only revolver, it's notably smooth and consistent. Many longtime Colt shooters say it stacks in a predictable and controllable way, especially impressive for a snub nose. Community insight. Within the Colt community, the Night Cobra has developed a kind of a quiet reputation. It's not flashy, it doesn't chase trends, and it's not trying to replace the classics. Instead, it's one of those revolvers that grows on you. The more time you spend with it, the more you start to appreciate what Colt was aiming for, a modern defensive revolver that still feels unmistakably like a Colt. There's also a bit of scarcity involved. The true DAO Night Cobras were made in relatively small batches, and not every Cobra you see out there is a genuine Night Cobra. That limited production and slightly confusing market presence have given the model a niche appeal, especially among collectors who like the transitional in-between guns in Colt's history. Here are a few common real-world impressions. Rarity and identification. The true Night Cobras can be harder to find and are not always clearly identified. That limited, intermittent production has helped make them more sought after among both shooters and collectors. Value and resale. Because of their relative scarcity and the interest they generate in certain circles, Night Cobras sometimes sell in the secondary market for more than their original retail price. Aesthetics and personal taste. While many shooters appreciate the purposeful, blacked out look, a subset of Colt fans find aspects of this design less attractive compared to the polished traditional lines of vintage models. Like most wheel guns, taste is subjective, and the Night Cobra doesn't try to please everyone. Is the Colt Night Cobra for you? So is the Colt Night Cobra for everyone? Probably not. If you want a bright, polished showpiece or pure nostalgia, a vintage Colt might be more your speed. But if you appreciate purposeful design, solid engineering, and a revolver that quietly bridges Colt's past and present, the Night Cobra absolutely deserves a closer look. It doesn't shout for attention, but for those who know Colts, it speaks volumes. The Night Cobra has a way of growing on people. A lot of owners who buy one out of curiosity end up keeping it, not because it's flashy, but because it works. It feels right in the hand, and it delivers a distinctly modern interpretation of classic Colt DNA. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Colt Night Cobra, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments your preference. Do you prefer the vintage, or do you prefer the modern Cobra? I'll see you in the next one.